Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land. Magical, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land.
Today's guest is a former colleague and great thinker. He is senior visual designer at Fjord, the design and innovation consultancy that is part of Accenture. Please welcome to the show, Jakob Holmsberg. Hello, Jakob. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks. Out of almost sunny Copenhagen here, so I'm doing great. And lovely to be here.
Here it's always raining. I don't know what's going on. I always hear that so nice weather when I talk to other people, but here's always raining.
It's been pretty great, but now it's I don't know. We just had a few days of sunshine. It's freezing. It's like minus 4 degrees Celsius, but
yeah, we're plus.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So before we dive into what design and innovation is and how we can learn from you and your perspective, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What is your story?
Yeah, so my name is Jakob Holmsberg. I'm a visual designer. I'm currently employed at Fjord, part of Accenture Interactive. I live in Copenhagen. I have 2 kids and a wife. I get like if I go a bit back to where I come from, I've always been drawing, and that's sort of what sparked my interest into sort of visual design. I have a mother who started out working in advertising and is really good at drawing, so that piqued my interest there. And then I have my father passed away a couple of years ago, but he was very much into innovation and connecting sort of like inventors with businesses who could help take their innovation further. Mm. So I think like that's maybe where I'm coming from historically. That I've had these like two parts of me kickstarting my career: the curiosity for getting out there with something visual, and the curiosity of just thinking about innovation and inventions and how you could sort of apply that into a business context. So my father always brought these gadgets home, like weird stuff that he was working on with inventors, and was thinking about how he could hook them up with the proper business to scale for them. So that was always a very, very fun thing when he brought stuff like that home. So I think that's sort of like where I'm coming from, and my approach to innovation and design is sort of out of that more than anything. Mm. And then, when it comes to education and more like proper going into a design career and innovation career, I went through a few design schools, one in particular in the southern part of Jutland that was not necessarily the best school. So I was hooking up with a bunch of classmates, trying to look around what everybody else was doing in the more of the professional landscape, and trying to mimic what they were doing and trying to copy and learn. Got out of school, went to Copenhagen, started at a few design agencies, got a bit more traction, and that's how I got into the business, I guess.
Yeah, and for those who are listening who have never heard where Jutland is, it's the south part of Denmark, which is like on the border to Germany.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I was raised in the northern part of Jutland, but a bit of local Dane.
It's interesting. I would like to look back to your father. So what was the weirdest thing he was bringing home?
He was bringing a lot of stuff home. So a lot of the stuff was like crafted in aluminium, or he at some point he was working with an inventor who was working on a ceramic razor. It could just be little gadgets. It could be more like grand innovation things. Mm-hmm. I just remember like a lot of nifty little metal things, little things you like almost you could fit in your pocket, and just seeing his excitement about that, and trying to and sometimes it was you like material samples or like weird stuff, and we get to play with it. So it was, I just remember it as as always a fun thing. I didn't know if I actually understood what was going on. It was more like a fun little gadget he brought home when I was really young. But I remember the stories, though. I remember the stories of how, he found this individual who was in his basement doing this amazing thing, and he was really excited for him, and he was trying to figure out how he could hook that individual up and what the challenges were. So we had conversation around that. And I remember also sometimes his disappointment when a particular invention, like I think if I remember correctly, the ceramic razor was a thing where the inventor got bought out. It might have been Gillette who bought him out and just said, like, we're going to shelve this product. And it didn't amount to anything, but at least he got a few million out of it, and then he could live happily with his family. But those stories was definitely an inspiration growing up, and just having those conversations with my father, definitely.
What did you learn from that perspective? Now you're in the professional world, using innovation and design, helping clients to be more innovative, building products and a lot more. So what did you learn from that mindset, and what you have seen your father is doing?
I think being a pragmatist more than anything. So I don't have any, as I mentioned with the school situation, I don't have any lengthy degree, or I barely have a bachelor. So I was always interested in the craft of creating something, whether it be in a physical object or a visual thing or a digital thing, or like just getting something out there was sort of my thing, and what got me into the situation. So just being just the pragmatist about the situation, and understanding that there's not going to be, you're just not going to make a product and that's just going to be perfect. You need to refine, and then you need to have a bit of luck, and you need to get connected with a bunch of people, and then you need to iterate, and you need to sort of move things forward, and there are different processes and different ways of doing that depending on where you're at, and you need to learn more than anything as you go along. So I think it's also inspiring when some of the stuff was in metal, some of the stuff was in plastic, and just, we were talking about the molds, and there's just a steep learning curve on understanding how you actually get a product to the market, and how then how you scale, and then how do you become successful, and there's like different pitfalls, and there's a lot to be said around that. But I think that being a pragmatist more than anything is what I'm bringing into it. There's a lot of I'm trying to read a lot up on theory as well, but I'm definitely a pragmatist in the heart. I want to get stuff done. I want to get it out there. I want to see it live, and I want to get feedback and improve. Right, that's sort of the design approach.
We have been working together, so I see a lot of things now which I didn't know about your father. So it's quite cool to see that now. So going into the design and innovation world, before we start digging more into the innovation piece, let's give our listeners a little bit of understanding what your definition of design is, and what people think of design, because we're more into business, and most of my listeners will be more into business and innovation topics. But I think it's valuable for everyone to understand what design is and how you see design.
Yeah. So design is a different thing or a hard thing to define. You get a lot of different definitions on what is design depending on what industry you're in. If it's furniture or fashion or digital or whatever the area is. I think that, I don't know if I'm going to be able to nail it down in like one sentence. I think for me, more than anything, design is an approach to understanding where you can, first of all, figure out where there's a problem that you can fix, but also understand all of the implications in that statement. Like, how do you, first of all, figure out if that is the right problem? Figure out what is the research, what do you need to learn in order to figure out if that is the right problem, and then when you believe that you're on the right path, then how do you then make actions towards it and create something that will solve that problem, right? I think that's maybe also like the the basic definition of design. There's a lot to be said around design. I'm trying to keep it short. Of course, there's something around the execution and getting something out there. You can talk about, for days and days. But I think, let's keep that short for now.
So if we now link design and innovation, because you're working in Fjord, which is design and innovation consulting. So how do you distinct it and how do you merge it? What are the commonalities and differences?
That's also a good question, and also a very broad one. I think that for me, it's more like designing is solving something and getting something out there, right? And innovation is more like improving on something or creating something new or novel that is something that maybe haven't been seen before, or is tweaking something to a degree where it's becoming something else. For me, they go very much hand in hand. I think design and innovation and that's obviously also why I work at Fjord, is I don't think or in my opinion, it's hard to have one without the other. And I think the way that we work with design is very much about, coming in to a situation with a client and then understanding, the landscape and where they're at, and then how can we use their strength to generate a new product or a new service or a new strategy or whatever else they need to be, whatever else that needs to be created, right? So it's always for me about creating something better or creating something that is more effective or whatever word you want to use, but it's about changing something, right? It's about taking something from a current state and making it to something better at another state, with all the implications of, especially if you have a big company, like what do you need to change the strategy in order to make that happen? Do you need to change the culture? Do you need to change the processes? Do you need to change the supply chain? Do you need to change the business? Do you need to there's a lot of change stuff as you go up in scale, where that can almost become the main the main challenge, where you get hired to change a small service or a product and then actually find out, actually the main pain point is within this particular pillar of the organization and the culture here, and that's exactly the thing you need to change in order to change that other thing. So I think we tend to go a bit upstream whenever we get hired in, and sometimes people find it maybe a bit tiring that we challenge stuff, but we really like to figure out where the root cause of any given situation lies, so you can get to that stuff first and fix that, so you don't put a band-aid on a cancer patient, right? You need to understand what you're looking at.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things I learned as well when we work together, is understanding that you need to challenge your clients. You need to go to the extent of where they feel uncomfortable, because then there is something. And it's of course completely different environments where we are now working in, but I still use that way of thinking. What I learned from the brilliant colleagues, it's like understanding that and figuring it out, and not just saying, hey, okay, we do this or we do that. Why should we doing that? What is the root cause of doing it? And digging more into that. I think it's sometimes painful, but super valuable for the end result, and specifically then when you work on culture topics.
Yeah, and that's also why the coaching part is interesting, as you know more than anyone, right? It tends to be the work that we do now is similar to coaching, where you have to go in and then you have to assess the client, and you in that trustful relationship, you need to figure out like, where do you want to go, like where, and then how far can I help you go there. And then we need to assess like an athlete. We need to assess like, what are you capable of? Like, when is it gonna hurt? Like, if you want to run a marathon, how can I incrementally move you there, and how far can I push you? And when are you gonna object, and when are you gonna play along? And along the way, there's gonna be peaks and valleys, and it's something that requires a lot of trust, and it requires a lot of just honesty along that way in order to move a company with all of the stakeholders and all of the culture and all of the stuff along that path towards the end result. And that takes skill. That takes a lot of coaching skill to understand how do you move people from A to B, and along the way when people object, or there are disappointments, or I thought it would be different, or now, or there might be something that some people see as a win and others see as a fail. Or there's then you have almost like mutiny sometimes. Then how do you keep all your ducks in a row, and how do you move forward? And how do you make sure that you deliver that result in the end? And that when you deliver that result, you also take all of this up into account, so you don't finish cross the finish line and then the whole company is on fire and everybody's hurting. You need to cross the finish line and make sure that people feel the success, and you have ambassadors and followers for your next endeavor, and you build a relationship along the way, right? So you people might be a bit sore, and that's fine. But there's a lot to be said around pushing innovation through big organizations and making sure that you do it in the right way, so people feel that they also learn along the way, and they enjoy the process.
Let's dig more into big organization, because I know you have worked with fairly big organizations in the past. So what are the challenges when we look into innovation inside of large organizations, or innovating in large organizations?
That depends so much on the company. It depends a lot on the culture. It depends a lot on the mandate that you're given. Sometimes you like to have a mandate, located high up, and then you get granted permission to move deeper into the organization. But then if it's an organization where the CEO says, yeah, we're doing that, but the rest of the organization is not in line with it, then that mandate is as you meant, culture will eat that up for breakfast, right? So you need to understand your permission, and who is along for the journey, who is going to sabotage it sometimes, honestly, and who has different agendas and KPIs, and how everything is sort of aligning to where you want to move it. So for big organizations, more than anything, I think is also what I'm talking into now. There's a lot to be said around culture, and how you set up the processes and make sure that people play along with you. So you get buy-in, and you get less friction, and you get less corridor resistance. So you actually can move forward with what you are trying to do. And then I think another thing is definitely, and that's maybe being a visual designer, that's how I at least work, is that as a visual designer, traditionally, if I just put on my craft hat, then I'm a visual designer. I do digital screens, interfaces, posters, prints back in the day, or and I see it much more as a craft to visualize anything, to get people on board, to make stuff tangible. And that tangibility is really a core skill to move things forward, especially in large corporations. You need to sometimes craft objects, almost like totem poles, that can speak for you in your behalf, so you can scale. So if you can create, sometimes it's a poster, sometimes it's a deck, sometimes it's a video, whatever the format is, get some formats out that is easily communicating what you're trying to communicate, and make people think and make people buy into the vision. So both for scale, but also just for sometimes it's good to leave yourself in the background. So it's not about me, it's about the thing, and we can critique the thing, and that opens up for discussion where you just get more honesty, and you get more the ambassadors will then come to you afterwards and, hey, I like that thing, but I have trouble here and here in the organization. Or sometimes if people don't come back, then it's like, that's interesting. At least now I know where they're positioned and they're not on board necessarily. How can I then get them on board? Or they maybe have conflicting KPIs, and then, okay, how can we talk with them about, what their pain points are in order for us to be a success with what the company wants, right? So that the two things, understanding culture and then using those visual objects and move that in front of you, and sort of keep the pace is sort of key, I guess, for those large scale organizations, at least to how I approach it.
Yeah. Interesting that you said, I just have had a conversation the other day where we looked into a change project for a company and looked into what could be the vehicle that we work with that gets the company to change, because changing for the sake of changing is not something that helps everyone to understand it. So it's to your point, it's like have something tangible where everyone can focus on, and that will expose what's not working or what is working, and then you can work around that topic. It's quite interesting because a lot of organizations don't do it. They just, let's say, they put a strategy out there and say, hey, let's change. It's, yeah, okay, let's change. It's in the 5-year plan that we should change, but it's not happening.
Yeah, but that's like strategy. Sometimes it's the easy part, right? It's really making sure that you have those successes incrementally. Yeah. So I think like if you only focus on the short-term successes or the long-term, you'll fail. You have to do both. Like the strategy will help focus on how we get to the long-term success, but then you need to deliver on the short-term successes as well. Otherwise, people get frustrated, or people want to change, or the strategy, or fighting it. So and then you need to figure out what does success look like for each and every one. So you make sure that you deliver on it. So for some it might be monetary. Sometimes it's a different KPI. So yeah, making sure that you deliver those short-term successes. And I think more and more so for the big companies, right? If a C-suite individual, that individual wants to look good, then you need to bring some numbers or some incremental success for buy-in for the product or for the project. Sometimes you really need to make sure that it's not like we signed the contract, like now everything's good, we can just do our work. You need to make sure that you then, I don't want to say grease the wheels, but it's more like understand how you deliver those incremental successes for keeping people engaged and active and behind it and supporting it to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I always talk about the language of business, and that the language of business will change things. And that's part of that, 100% agree, is that you need to understand what the language of the business is to be able to speak their language inside an organization. And specifically, if you're an outsider of the organization, you need to understand what they're looking into. And then if you have a project, it's kind of, I always call it GPS. You need to build a GPS that everyone understands. Hey, that's where we want to go. And the GPS will help us to get there. It's like having Google Maps. But even Google Maps is only working if you have trigger points in between where Google Maps, the knowledge behind it, the algorithm knows, okay, there's a crossroad, there's something else, that's not a real road. So you need to build that up over time and then learn.
Totally. And then like also you mentioned, the language is a huge thing. I think coming from the design world, like sometimes the design language can be like a bit of a barrier. If you come in strong, trying to force a business into, now you need to understand design thinking, or now you need to understand service blueprint. And like if you're not using those words, it becomes a weird barrier where all of a sudden now, like you need to worry about your business, but now I'm like putting a layer in where you need to understand design too. Like that doesn't fly. I need to be a chameleon into your world. I need to understand your language. And if you're calling this pillar X, I'm going to call it pillar X. If you're calling your strategy, the light tower vision, that's what I'm going to use. So we don't come in with like weird terminology or even worse, acronyms. And then we just alienate everyone in the process, right? And then you like, I'm a consultant. Like I'm coming in with a mandate where I have no skin in the game. Like if this blows up, I still have my day job. So there's something to be said about the humility around, like we need to come in and improve your business. So we're very humble coming in. Like thank you very much. We like you want to go to your goal, we'll help you go there, but it's going to be on your terms. Like if coming back to the sports metaphor, right? If you don't show up for practice, there's nothing I can do. I can sit there and roll my plans but we're not going to move anywhere. So I need to come where you are in order to move you, right? Yeah. Or at least tease you in, right? And invite you in. So we don't do that by alienating the language.
Yeah. I would love to move now to small company perspective, because one thing, you have had your own business, and if you're okay with that, describe us a little bit what you did and what you learned during that time.
Sure. So I was working at a design agency, and we were doing a lot of fashion campaigns, a lot of lifestyle marketing. It was like sort of like a brand agency. And yeah, I liked it, but there was also a lot of filtering of what got out, and I was curious to see whether or not I could do it on my own, honestly, and I was curious to see, like, what if I remove everything around me? Can I then make it? Can I make a living? Can I put out quality work? Can I understand? First of all, can I learn more about where I'm at in this moment in time? So more than anything, it was just trying to see if I could sort of make it on my own. So I left the agency, and then I created my own one-person agency, and did that for 3.5 years, doing a bit of the same. Did a lot of fashion campaigns. I did a lot of also cultural communication, work with some galleries and some art stuff, and it was a bit of a patchwork. But more than anything, it was really it taught me just the entrepreneurial spirit of just I need to put food on the table every month. I need to I have an apartment. I have a life that I want to sustain. I'm in a relationship. I need to keep this moving. So more than anything, and that every entrepreneur know that, like if you have skin in the game in that regard, it's a different vibe. So I was curious to sort of take that on as a learning more than anything, I guess, to see if I could actually stomp something out of the ground. And I did that for 3.5 years, and then at some point I was working a lot with another agency who were working for a client, Royal Copenhagen, a porcelain company in Copenhagen, and I was working with them a lot. And then the financial crisis hit, and I was like, oh shit, this is pretty bad. And like over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, like business was just super hard, and I was struggling to maintain my pricing. And it just made sense at that moment in time. So, okay, right, I've proved my point. This tsunami is too much for a one person company to sort of deal with at the way I wanted to do it. So it made sense to sort of team up with the other agency. So I went over there and was heading up their design capability instead. So that was the journey of it. So it was more like a learning thing than anything else. It was sort of proving that I could sustain a business, and sort of like I was working with Samsung at the time, who was doing a lot of business with me. So that was also really nice to sort of see it grow in size of the client. So I thought, okay, I've proven my point. I need to move on. And then one thing as like working as an entrepreneur, especially as an individual, it's also a bit of a lonely job sometimes. And I saw how I just longed for teamwork. I craved that the synergy of working together collaboratively, getting more smart people in the room. I tend to for all my career, I want to be next to smart people. If I'm the smartest people in the room, I tend to want to get out. So I just want to be the stupidest person in the room, because that's when I know I learn. So I was just looking for opportunities to be together with smart people and learn more than anything after those 3.5 years. So that was like my entrepreneurial story. But I think everybody should try that at some point. Everybody should try to have that amount of skin in the game, because that is really, if nothing else, you will be a much more well-rounded employee afterwards, because you understand now what the CEO is stressing about. You understand now, the business of things, and what does it mean to have a client walk out on a project when times are rough, and when you're really down, right? There's something to be said about that learning that is it gets implemented in a deeper level in you, than any other learning, because you sort of feel it in a different way.
Absolutely. As well, like we discussed before recording, that there are bumps. It's not depending what you're doing, but especially if you're selling services, it's not that it's, hey, you have a client the whole year and all is fine. Maybe you get someday to that level, but especially when you begin, it's like there's something, then there's nothing for a while, and then there comes something again.
Totally. And that's also the way you set it up is much smarter. Like, I didn't know that at the time, but like if you're an independent consultant and you're selling your time, like you're either stressed about having nothing to do or stressed about having too much to do. There's never that sweet spot, right? So it also takes a toll on you. So you need to be proactive and set up a sustainable business around your assets, so you don't just drown or stress yourself out, right? You need to be able to ride the wave. You've also mentioned that, right? You need to, like, because there's like Christmas holidays, like nothing gets done. You have like summer holidays, nothing gets done. And if you stress about that, then like in the end of the day, like you'll just be stressed and there's not going to be more business. So you need to be more nimble about your peaks and valleys in terms of your time, right? So yeah, you need to set it up a bit smarter than I did, but I enjoyed it a lot. I look back like fond memories, like coming back from a big client meeting in my car alone, driving into the site, like, fuck yeah, we did it. And then like looking around in the car, it was like just me. But at least like I did that. I went to that meeting, I did that thing. So there's a tremendous amount of pride still. So yeah.
And it's great to hear, because there a couple of the listeners are as well, either they are in that situation where they have started a business and kind of look how that works and still figuring things out, which I think will always be the case when you own a business. But it's also I have a couple of listeners who are coming from a large corporational background, and they're on the edge of thinking they should be jumping into that. So it's great to hear that you said it's super valuable. And even if it didn't work out in the end as you wanted to have it, you can always go back. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah. No, but I think if you're at the verge of wanting to jump, then you should totally jump. Like it's not gonna be a complete failure or a complete success. It's gonna be somewhere in between. And probably you're gonna sustain longer than your worst fear. Anyway, right? That's like the worst case scenario is never like nothing. It's always something. And then like it always leads to something, right? You never know, like you don't know the unknown. So you don't know who you meet. You don't know what could trigger something. You don't know the relationship you could build. You don't know how something can lead to another, right? That's the serendipity of it. Like you just don't know, right? Yeah. And that just allowing you to take the wheel, like really take the wheel and drive wherever you want to take it and be fully like 100% responsible for that decision all the time. That's a great learning. And it's something that you can read all the management books, like you can read all the theory, like it doesn't matter. Like it really doesn't matter on that rainy Wednesday when everything is just, it's just there. Like there's no books to help you. You're just there. I feel like the books are helping you to take the jump. And then when you're in it, you're just in it. It's almost like, I need to read the book by Scott Belsky, The Messy Middle, where he really like just focusing on that part. I have it on my to read list, because there's definitely something to be said about like just being in it and just trying to swim and just, trying to make it. And then even if you have a success, then all of a sudden you're right back into another middle. And that's like where you spend the most part. Like, so you need to understand that and take all the learnings you can get from it, right?
Yeah, what I've seen definitely for myself, the learning accelerates, like it's not 10x, it's 100x. Because like you said, you're all day in. You know what's going on. You wake up in the middle of the night, have a great idea and get shit moving. It's not that, I can do that next week. Or most of the time, at least for me, it's not that way.
Oh, totally. And then when you have like the dark periods, right? That's where it's also tricky, where like it's a different game when your mind playing tricks on you and you second guess your decisions, or you're like, in theory this should work and it just doesn't. So then what do you do, right? How do you like? Am I pivoting now? Is it too soon? Like how? Like some decisions you can do again, right? Most of the decisions, but some decisions you are hard to redo. So it's just understanding how you treat that and find peace in it. I think like there's a lot of conversation now also for entrepreneurs about just mental health and just understanding the loneliness of it. I think that's something also to be very open about, and it's sometimes tricky. It's really tricky, and that's just how it is. It's not like that's not a unique experience to you. That's for everyone. But just being honest about that, and also reach out, right? If you need help, I think especially if you're in it alone, it's really nice to have a community or be part of an accelerator or an incubator or whatever to have those conversations.
Yeah, that's quite interesting that you said that. I was moderating an executive roundtable for entrepreneurs this Tuesday. It's quite interesting. This is growing now. I'm part of different and several of these roundtable discussions, which is like in the old days, at least in Germany, it was called Rotary Club, where it's like the entrepreneurs of the local community are meeting every Saturday for a breakfast or whatever. That's kind of now everything is in a digital environment, and it's across borders, which is super interesting to experience. It's like, hey, there's a guy from South Africa, a person from London, a person from Denmark, and me from Germany talking about something which we all care about, and we're meeting every 2 weeks. It's super interesting to see that now, being in the pandemic, that things are kind of developing in a way where you can reach out and build networks in a completely different way than ever before.
Totally, and I think it's even more than a nice to have. It's a necessity, and I think being fortunate to be in a consultancy where I get to submerge myself into like different industries and different projects and different service and product, like all of that, and I like that a lot because that's where you really get to cross pollinate. So actually, in healthcare, they're thinking about it this way, or in logistics, they're thinking about it this way, and then you can sort of connect the dots. And as an entrepreneur, being in a community where you can do that, like you need to specialize, of course, in your field of expertise, but then understanding just the diversity of what other people are looking at is really vital. Because then, like, you can go, if you go too deep into your own rabbit hole, sometimes it becomes a bit weird. And if you don't have that, like, of course, you want to listen to your customers, but you also want to see opportunities beyond what the customer sees, right? So you want to have that more diverse, just look into the world with different lenses to see different opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's what I always say to people I work with. You need to focus on giving rather than taking. It's like when you're on this round table, it's not about you selling something to the others, because there might not be even your customers, but it's how can you provide your insights and your knowledge to this guys, and the other way around as well. And if you focus on giving, you will get something back in a long-term perspective.
Totally. I'm a big believer in karma. Yeah. Like, I think if you go into a room and you want to sell stuff, like everybody's been in the room with that guy or girl selling like that tough sell, and everything's like the hard sell. It's off-putting, and it's an unequal relationship, and it's not necessarily something, it's not the right strategy in most cases. I think just going in with that generosity of mindset and just trying to be helpful is it's key. We talked about the long game, right? That's where you want to be, and then good stuff will come to you.
Yeah. So slowly going to an end, being respectful of your time. So I've always one question which I'm asking everyone on the podcast, which is like, if you could be part or leading a project in your case that's felt and seen and connect to everyone on the whole planet. It's like everyone will see, feel it, or whatever, get attached to it. What project would you like to lead or be part of?
Yeah, that's another big question. I think, especially the way the world looks today with just the current pandemic, but even beyond the pandemic, just health in general, and just how there's so much suffering and how, healthcare is so unequal distributed. I think something around bringing better health to everyone on the globe would be like a noble goal. Maybe that's a bit cliche, but I think something like that would be interesting. I think there's so much opportunity also in the healthcare space to democratize and to have a broader reach. And to go global on a project like that would be interesting. Like even in the West, there's a lot of funding now going into making sure that especially cancer patients can be treated at home, and there's different digital services and products that enable that. I think stuff like that I think is super interesting, and we'll see that grow even more so in the future. So be part of a global rollout of that on a general level would be, I think that would be amazing.
Yeah. Then where will you be in a year from now? What's happening? What do you think will happen for you? And you can answer that from a personal perspective, business perspective, doesn't matter.
Yeah, so in a year's time, that's a good question. I think, business-wise, I'll definitely hopefully be where I'm at currently. I enjoy it very much working with the different client relationships that we have. On a personal note, I think it'll be pretty much where we're at. We just moved into a new apartment, had another kid, so just getting comfortable with that situation and understanding, how to maintain that is where my mind is at currently. So not that much challenging stuff around neither family life nor professional life. I just enjoy what we're doing, and I think regarding the work that we do as consultants right now, especially in the digital space, is really high in demand, and we're actually hiring people, even though it's just a crazy time, right? People are losing their jobs left and right. So I'm also being respectful of different situations. I just enjoy that we are able to run a business now, and that the offers that we are putting out there are in demand, especially around digital. So yeah, helping our clients advance is where I'm going to be at the next year.
And you have the beauty of being in one of the best teams of the world, because I've been there, I know it. So one of the things I need to ask you, because that's very interesting, and I have seen that a lot with you when we work together. It's like, how do you keep yourself up to date? What are your news sources, different input to form your decisions?
So I just tend to read a lot. And I tend to forget a lot. So I feel like there's a quote, of course I can't remember who said it, right? But there's something about like study as you forget all the time. So I that's how I just try to read ferociously. I tend to have a book list of just business literature, design literature, management literature. And that could be like the top 10, 20 New York Times bestseller list, all of the stuff that everybody else is reading as well. And then I try to have a bit more on right now it's a bit more like old school philosophy, like Plato and Socrates and Aristotle, and just to try to go back a bit and the thinking around, what grounded the Western civilization. And then, just the random innovation podcast, as I know you listen to, like Tim Ferriss is amazing, like him a lot. But I tend to like spread it out a little bit, so I don't do like 10 management books in a row or like too much of one thing. I tend to like spread it out a little bit. I will say I'm turning down the news a lot. I'm trying to get away. It's more like what do I not do, right? So I try to get off whatever social media as much as I can, because I'm not perfect in any way, but I've tried to like get away from the noise. There's so much stuff out there, and then try to get to what is actually bringing value of literature. So I try to be quite selective with the stuff and my time as well.
That's quite an interesting perspective, even if we are already at the end. What I see, there's a movement towards value and long-term content rather than super short. But everyone says that the attention span is shortening. So how do you see that for yourself?
I think it's just, for me personally, it's more about having a calm mind. Like if I get too crowded with news of the day, or this hot tech thing now, or like I try to stay updated. Of course, there's like different layers to it, and I need to stay updated with current business stuff or developments, or but then for my own personal satisfaction, I tend to want to go deep, and then really immerse myself into a particular thinking or something that goes beyond 10 steps to be a success, blah, 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 or like 10 ways of doing management right, or like 10 ways to, and try to go a bit deeper, and then have some, formulate some sort of personal opinion in it. So I don't end up, sometimes I get mortified if I find myself regurgitating a management book principle where I haven't really given it much thought. Similar to if you're at a company and you just, you take in whatever principle that they have, and then you spit it out to a client, but then you don't really have given it much thought. I get when I'm in that situation, I'm like, I want to shoot myself. So I try to use the mode of the deep thinking to just formulate an honest opinion. And then I also feel like that's what sticks the most. And it's more like, if I'm going to spend a couple of days or a week reading something, I want to make sure that investment pays off. I don't want it to be shallow. I want it, even if it's more like just a nice prose literature or whatever, then I want to make sure that it's quality.
Absolutely. Cool. So how can people find you and reach out to you?
They can find me on, I think Twitter and LinkedIn is where I'm at in business context. Just my full name, Jakob Holmsberg, on LinkedIn and Twitter. I think that's what makes sense. I have an Instagram account as well, but that's more like personal baby stuff. So I don't know if that's necessarily what you're looking for, but you're welcome to join there as well.
Okay, I will put the links into the show notes as well.
No, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure seeing you again and talking to you and having me on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I really miss you, Jens. I really want you back in the team. So I'm like, yeah.
Sorry for that.
Seems like you're doing too good of a job. So it's going to be a while. But
we
really,
will see.
Really lovely catching up with you. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Yes, thank you very much.
Or whatever.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land, magical, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land.